Hey traders, Raghee here, and in this recap video I'm going to cover a lot of sort of this tactical approach we're having to the current market downtrend. And it is a downtrend, and this is one that we've been preparing for in the SF room, the Simpler Futures room, for quite some time. And the SFers have been prepared for this because this has been a conversation that dates back to really late summer, early fall. And let me give you a couple of the cues that we use, and you can do this on your own, whether you're a member or not, and it will help a lot. First of all, you can go on over to sectorspider.com. Sectorspider.com is a free resource, and it's one that I highly recommend because it's going to allow you to see really what's happening in the markets broadly. Meaning, if we're seeing weakness like we did today, the Dow's down 395 points, it was down over 500 at its worst, what markets were actually holding their own? That's another thing we want to think about. So real estate comes to mind, utilities come to mind. Also take a look at what sold off less. Energies held their own, consumer staples had their own, and curiously, and I do mean that, financials did. Now, I don't like long financials, but financials did pretty well. If you've been looking at these, you'll notice these four have been really what's been holding up well on down days. This one's kind of iffy, so I'd be real careful with financials. But if you look at this every day on up and down days, if you want to understand rotation, this is the way to understand it. And having looked at this for years and years and years, I know there are certain places we're going to see strength. So the next question is, okay, Rag, I get it, I understand what's moving and when I need to build a position and names that are going to be more resilient in this downtrend. Because, by the way, if you've been watching the premium videos as a member, but heck, if you've been watching the recap videos as a non-member, we've been talking about utilities, energies, and staples for quite some time. In fact, we've been saying less discretionary, more staples. Certainly less tech, more staples, right? Less industrials, real estate. Looking at also the bonds, looking at also utilities, okay? So those are places we go. Well, let's talk about utilities here today, because utilities are a perfect example of a market that's heading higher while the rest of the market heads lower. Now, this is where relative performance is really important, because this is not a great looking trend. I'll be the first one to say, looking at this, is this a well-structured uptrend? Not even close. But if you compare the XLU to the DIA or the YM futures, you can see just how much better looking it truly is. Same thing will go for a lot of the other markets that we've been talking about, like staples, and staples is probably one of the best looking uptrends. Selectively bullish in markets like we're seeing right now is very important. Finding those outliers, finding those sectors that are outliers, finding those stocks and commodities and currencies that are outliers. That's very much a part of being a futures trader. And then building that portfolio that's really, I don't want to say bulletproof, but certainly it's going to be able to deal with this kind of onslaught of weakness much, much better. All right, back to the XLU. So XLU is interesting because this is something I want to caution my traders about. And we'll talk about XLU, XLP, and also XLV as well. In this area is not when I want you to build those longer term positions. This is not when I want you to do it. It's down in here. Okay? So let's go to XLV. Right now you can see XLV is so heavily weighted within the well, take a peek here. It's so heavily weighted within the S&P. It's heavily weighted within the NASDAQ. It's quite heavily weighted within the Dow, although not as major a sector. But you can see that as the larger averages head lower, they're going to be a drag on healthcare. Well, healthcare is actually a buy lower in the range. But you know what's looking really good in healthcare? This is what I mean about outliers. If you slice open the XLV, look at the names inside of it, out come two really nice relative performance names in Johnson & Johnson and Merck. I'm really giving you guys a great watch list right here, so please take note, maybe watch the video again. Then we have also so we talked about XLU, talked about XLP, and nice trend here, pull back buy, absolutely. Here's the XLU, and then here's XLRE. Now in the premium video, I'll talk more about why I believe real estate and REITs are heading higher, and why I am also looking to short yield, which is actually a long position in the 30-year futures or the TLT ETF. And we'll talk about why that's working, because it might seem very counterintuitive to a rising rate environment, which is a question I get quite a bit. But what is it that bonds do? They discount really far ahead. And I'll show you what the setup is in bonds, in ITB, XHB, XLRE, VNQ, and how that relates back to this very important futures contract. So think about what we've talked about here in this video, and I'll see you in the next update.